All right, everyone. In this part of our video series on top-down versus bottom-up, so in the first video we looked at the bottom-up approach, and we can see our data panel, how it's arranged there for the bottom-up approach, individual components, individual design files that are in those, and then we've created an assembly file for that. In the top-down approach, everything winds up in one design file. So these are the kind of methods that we can use to maybe increase efficiency or change some different ways we do things within Fusion. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you how to do some editing. In the previous videos and in the document that I have, we have some materials that have been applied, and I purposely saved these for this part so that way I can show you how these things kind of get edited and how the assemblies get updated as we go along. So I'm going to start off with the bottom up assembly. So this is called the quick slider assembly file, and here's kind of how it works. I'm going to go ahead and open up the base component as well. So a lot of times if we need to go through and make a change to a component, we can do that here in the design file, save it, and then come back and update the assembly. So like for example, I could go to modify, go to physical material, and when this menu loads, we can go through and take a look at the wood component or the wood materials and grab, I'm going to do pine southern on this and just select close, and I can hit the save button and select OK. So you're going to see the preview of it updates in the data panel. So I usually like to close this, but I'm going to keep it open just that way we can see the effects. But when I go back to the assembly, here's what happens. This is showing me the components out of date. This reference component is what's out of date. So I got to go through and I got to select this icon, or I could right click on the component name and choose, get latest version. And so that'll show up with the little yellow exclamation point icons that you see. So you can see this gets updated. Anytime you see the little asterisk, that means there's unsaved changes. So we would want to save that. But here's the other thing that you can do with a bottom-up assembly approach. So if you don't want to open up each individual file, so like the end component here, you're going to see there's a little pencil icon that's called Edit in Place. So if I select it, it'll tell me that this associativity is turned on. What this means is that whatever changes we make in this assembly, it's going to save the changes to the original file that I've got over here in the data panel. So I'm going to select OK. I'm going to go into Modify, Physical Material, and I'm going to do the exact same thing here. And actually what you're going to see is both of these end components will, because they're just kind of copies of each other, they're going to get applied. So I'm going to apply the pine material to it, select close. When I'm done editing, I can click the green check mark, and you can see both of these update. And when I click the save button, you're going to see this little thing happen that you might not be used to seeing in Fusion. Is it says it's going to be saving two designs. It's saving our quick slider assembly from version 2 to version 3 with these new changes, but also the end component right now shows as being version 1. So that's where it's still the steel material. Well, now it's going to be updated to version 2, even though we don't have that open. If I select OK, you're going to see that change over here. Version 1 becomes version 2 once this loads, and you can see already it's applied the new material to that. So those types of things are what kind of happens. So you can do an edit in place on a lot of these assemblies to go through, and that's what I'm going to do with these next two components. Is I'm just going to go ahead and go in here and grab my aluminum material and apply it to both of these components. So I'm going to go ahead and go to that metal folder. I like aluminum 6061, so it's a very common aluminum, and then we can go through and finish the edit. And I'm going to do the same thing on the slider. And if you notice, every time I do the edit in place, it automatically expands your component and it's activated. So if you look at this, it's actually like we're going back in and editing the actual component. So that's the cool part about it. So let me go ahead and edit this one more time. Go into physical material, and we can go ahead and see that here you can see in this design there's only steel. I want to make a note on that, so just kind of keep track of those things. And I can grab aluminum 6061 and drop that right on and select close. Finish my edit. I can collapse both of these, so unfortunately it doesn't collapse them right after you get done. But then I can go ahead and click the save button. It's going to tell me they're saving 3 designs. I can see which 3 that are being saved. I'm just going to say OK. And then we're going to see these changes update over here in the data panel. So all these things are connected to each other, and that's why you see the chain link icons. Any changes we make in the bottom up, are going to get reflected in the original design for the components. So again, anything that you'd have, like for example, if let's say we went into the original component file and maybe we went through and we edited the sketch. Maybe we want to make this a little longer, 7 inches. I can say finish sketch. If I save this, and then if I go into my assembly, so here's my component, I can say get the latest version. Now here's one thing that will happen is that obviously our components are not exactly the way we modeled them. We would have to go through and edit like the aluminum rod and some of the positionings if we needed to go through and make that happen. So there is one drawback to bottom up, is you would have to go into each individual component. So if I want to go back in here and change this back, then I can go through and do so. So, which is what I want to do. I want to make sure it's set at 5 inches. Finish the sketch, save. And I could have done an edit in place. I'm going to close that tab. But let me go ahead and update the entire assembly and everything looks good again. So one thing I'll just kind of point out to you is that as we go into the top down file, there's some of that associativity that's already kind of set for us because we're basing it off other geometry. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and I'm going to close the bottom up file, and I'm going to go ahead and navigate here to top down, and I'm going to open this one up. Now any changes we want to make to this particular file, we need to activate the components in which that we're changing. So right now we've got the top level assembly. So if I want to make any changes to the base, I'm going to go here and I'm going to activate this component. So you're going to see everything else gets ghosted out except for the base component. And I can do the same exact thing that I did for the bottom up. So you're going to see a lot of similarities in some of the methods that we use, but at the same time, let me go ahead and go down here and grab pine to throw on here. There we go. You're going to see a lot of similarities, but yet there's a lot of differences too. So let me go and activate the end component here, and we'll go ahead and we'll modify physical material. Now here's the thing you're going to notice that I made you kind of take note of. Look up here at the top. The pine component, or the pine material for our component, is up here and in this design because we already used it here. So I'm just going to grab it from the top and drag it and drop on there, and then I'm going to hit close. Then let's go ahead and let's go to, and if I go back to activate the top level assembly, you're going to see there it is as well. So now the other side did not exactly take to this, so let me go ahead and do physical material. Let me grab pine, drop it on there. Now it looks good. Now while I've got this open, I could activate each component and any kind of changes we need to make, but I'm going to go ahead and see if we can take our aluminum 6061. Notice how it just gets applied to this component, and the same thing on our slider block, and that works well too. So that's the cool part, is that you don't have to go into each individual component and edit. The other benefit of using top down is if I go into the base, activate it, and if I look at the sketch, so the first sketch was where we modeled the base component. So if I say edit sketch and I change this to 7 inches like I did in the last file, I can say finish the sketch. Now if you look, everything looks pretty good, and if I go down here I can actually look at the movement that I went through and had here. So if I edit the feature, I can actually drag this out to where it's going to be another 2 inches, which is what we added to the design, and I'm going to say okay. Now again, there's kind of where we might have to do a little bit of editing for a lot of these parts, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to this move icon, edit the feature. Let me put this back down to or move it in another 2 inches that we originally had it at, and I'm going to go back to my base component. So I'll go into the sketch, change this to 5, finish, and everything looks good. So again, just kind of looking at your components, what would we need to do to edit a lot of these? A lot of times you need to activate the components in order to see what's kind of going on, but also in some cases in a top-down approach, you can go through and apply a lot of edits and stuff based upon whatever sketch or whatever component that they have. So, all right, so I'm gonna go ahead and select save, and this really kind of finishes up a little bit on our top-down, bottom-up kind of video series as far as looking at those approaches. Like I said before, there's not one that's better than the other, or one that's right and wrong, or there's not really a situation. A lot of times it comes down to, I think, choice. But it would be worth noting that this program, Fusion 360, is optimized for top-down modeling. And it's something that's new, especially for me as a CAD user. It was something new to get used to. And now I really understand it well, and I think you will too the more you practice with it and you try it in different methods. And I think using a simple assembly like this will really go through and help you understand that a lot better. So hopefully this helped, and again, enjoy modeling with Fusion 360.